Texas Math Mundo audience, are we in store for a special treat today? In the house, Dr. Pamela E. Harris, an associate professor from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, a powerful example for our Latinx generation, and with such a powerful story to share. Dr. Pamela E. Harris, right ahead. Let me take a quick moment to ask that if you enjoy this content, that you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, that you leave a comment below, and that you smash that like button. I truly appreciate your support. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Are we in store for a treat today? In the house is Dr. Pamela Harris. Dr. Pamela Harris is an algebraic combinatorics, and she's the author of over 50 peer-reviewed research articles in internationally recognized journals. She was one of 50 women featured in the book Power in Numbers, The Rebel Women in Mathematics. Dr. Harris co-founded Latinx.org, a platform that features the contributions of Latinx and Hispanic scholars in the mathematical sciences. She co-hosts the podcast Mathematically Uncensored, has recently co-authored the books Asked and Answered, Dialogues on Advocating for Students of Color in Mathematics, and Practices and Policies Advocating for Students of Color in Mathematics. Her professional mission is to develop learning communities that reinforce students' self-identity as scientists, in particular for women and underrepresented minorities. Welcome, Dr. Harris. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. I can't wait to pick your brain. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Let's start off by asking, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. So I've just transitioned to a new institution. So I was previously at Williams College. I'm now at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And things are awesome. I mean, Milwaukee for me is home. And so it's so nice to, live 6 minutes away from my family. Wow. They're far enough that they just don't show up randomly. 6 minutes doesn't seem like a far enough drive, but my mom is like, you're still kind of far. So yeah, no, I'm enjoying my life right now.
It's never close enough for Hispanic parents. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. Her plan was like, oh, so you're moving in. And I was like, Mama, I'm almost, I don't want to say how old, but like we're not moving into your house.
Funny.
Yeah.
Funny. So we're going to delve deeply into a lot of issues that affect our community. But before we do that, I do want to know a little bit about you. What are your hobbies and interests, or does work consume your life?
This is a great question. So I think it used to consume my life. So first off, I love math and I love teaching. And so it's easy for the things that you love to take up the time in your day. But I think for me, the COVID pandemic really allowed me to kind of reset some of my priorities. And so when I'm not working, which again is still a big portion of my time, I really love lifting weights. So I've started, going to the gym. I train 6 days a week. And so for me, that's like my me time, right? There's no like, oh, I got to answer this email. I got to think about this project, or, how's the test going to be structured, or the class structure. It really is just like a time where I just pay attention to me. And so
Wow.
that's been really great.
Lifting weights. Really? I didn't expect that answer. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Wow. That's interesting. So, Dr. Harris, where are you from, born and raised, and what is your cultural heritage?
Yeah. So I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And we moved to the US when I was first 8 years old. And so that brought us to California, Southern California. And as folks know, Cali is a lovely place to live, but quite expensive. So my family didn't quite make out in the American dream in the way that we envisioned. So we actually had a short return to Mexico, and then eventually came to Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was 12. And so from the age 12 onwards, I've lived in the United States. And so for me, I love Mexico. And when I go to Mexico, it feels like home. But growing up in Milwaukee, like this also feels like home. And so I don't know that I can pick which one is, like home, but I love it. And I mean, culturally, I identify as Mexican American. I feel like I've been able to sort of weave the two cultures. And they both represent who I am and my lived experiences.
Oh, wow. 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 So, when did you realize that you had a talent for mathematics?
That's hilarious because I don't think I have a talent for math. I think that I am incredibly stubborn, and I'm willing to work really hard. But math is not something that comes easy to me. Like, I don't sit there and just like, oh, of course the answer is, I really have to think about it, sit down, do tons of examples. I'm a talker, as you can tell. So I really feel like the time that I started thinking like more mathematically happened, I think maybe, once I started college. Like, I had really good teachers at a community college that I attended, and they got me to think about like, why does that actually work? Why is it that if you do this, this happens? And it kind of inspired me to continue taking more math classes. But I honestly don't think I was like this like little gifted kid that was just like, I know how to do everything really fast and I'm amazing at math. So yeah, it's a labor of love.
Well, I'm glad you said that because my students think that you're either born with it or you're not. That's that perception.
No, no, no. No, no, no. That couldn't be further from the truth. It really is, what you spend your time on is the thing that you get good at. So if you're reading a lot, if you're riding your bike a lot, if you're skateboarding a lot, if you're drawing a lot, those are the things that you develop a talent, right? You're not born. You might be born with the ability to like, I don't know, lift something heavy, but then you still have to practice, right? Like we see some people that look kind of strong, but it's like they're lifting stuff. They're practicing. It's a matter of, again, what you spend your time on is the thing that you get good at.
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, with your unique background, unique past, tell me about your experience in our educational system and who inspired you.
Yeah, it was quite the journey. When we moved to Milwaukee, that kind of final time to the US, I was in seventh grade, and I started taking English as a second language classes. And I remember, feeling like I had a set of good friends because there were other immigrant children or, first generation American children whose home life was, fully in Spanish. And then they came to school and we were all learning English together. And so that helped me feel not as disconnected, I think, as I did as I started going through further along in my educational trajectory. But being undocumented and moving into high school, that for me was absolutely anxiety inducing. And I think at the time I didn't have that language to express like what I was really feeling, but it was just an incredible fear I lived with, like not being able to talk to anybody about it. I was excelling academically, But when the conversations came around for like, well, where are you going to go to college? I was just like, oh, I don't know. And then I would just like hide in the basement of the high schools where the art studios were. And at that time, I really just focused my energy into like putting my emotions into art. Like I said, I didn't know that math was like going to be my thing. Eventually, it really was at that point art. And I did a brave thing. I went to a community college, Milwaukee Area Technical College, and I, at that time it was paper applications, and so like I just showed up and I used the taxpayer identification number that I had as my social. And luckily I grew up in a time where it wasn't as common to like do anything online. You just like showed up and you put this and you paid them the $20, $30 I paid, and they let me in, and I was like, oh God, no, I'm a college student. Okay. I guess I just still won't tell anybody. But there was like a really challenging transition in that, I got married at the age of 19. My husband is, in the bedroom next door. So we're together and high school sweethearts. And so Jamal and I got married and my immigration status changed. And so I actually like had to go to the technical college and tell them like, oh, by the way, like, here's my social security number. And I remember having this meeting with the registrar, and, she's like, I don't understand. People don't have two social security numbers. And I was like, ha ha ha. Well, this is my social. Can you like change it in the system? And then she said, I don't know about this because this could just be you committing identity fraud. And we're going to have to talk to our lawyers about this. And so I left and I spent a week just feeling sick because I thought, I'm okay now, but my parents aren't, my siblings aren't. And like, now I just talked to the registrar trusting that they could help me. And like, I might get my entire family deported. And so that week, I just remember like, I didn't tell my parents because I was like, immigration's just going to show up and like, it's completely my fault. And so I just kept it hush hush. And I was like, Diosito, I was like bajando todo Los Angeles, right? Like just praying every day, all day for that week. And like, eventually I just get this letter in the mail and it says, old ITIN number, we've merged your records and here's your new social security number. And I mean, I was really lucky. And I don't know how much my story would be different had I not been the type of student at MATC who had high visibility. I was the president of the student government. I started a gay straight alliance. I was on the board of directors, like as the student representative. I was, again, academically excelling, which makes me really sad because I would like to believe that none of those things were the things that had people help me, like that they would just see me as someone who, went through something challenging and, by no choice of my own, and that they would help. And so I say that because we shouldn't have to be excelling in anything for people to treat us like humans, right? To think about those of us who were children and who came to the US, because our parents brought us, and think that, oh, you're here to steal my job. Like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying to make a difference in this world. And it shouldn't have to be the way that it currently is I guess what I'm saying. But yeah, so it was very, very challenging to be undocumented in the K through 12 system and in college.
Under normal circumstances, for a normal kid, it's hard to maneuver the system sometimes. I can only imagine the stresses and worries that filled your young mind as you were trying to make your way. I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah, it was rough.
Well, so did you have anybody inspire you during those years? Was there anybody that?
Yeah, I think for me, the inspiration has always been very close to home. Like I think a lot about, my parents and the fact that they didn't have the opportunities that they were giving me, right? Like they were willing to leave Mexico and to leave their family, their culture, their food, their language, everything. They were willing to leave everything with the hope that the opportunities that they would provide me and my siblings would allow us to thrive in whatever we did. And I think this is sort of a fairly common saying for Mexican parents, but like I remember my dad always would tell me, you got to work really hard. And anything that you do, and I'm crying, I'm trying not to cry because I just like can hear his voice, but he would say like, anything you do, like you be the best at it. If you're going to be cleaning, because that's what my parents, to this day, like they work at cleaning companies. If you're going to be the cleaner, like you make sure you clean that the best there that it has ever been cleaned. If you're a secretary, you be the best secretary. Anything that you do, like just be your best and work really hard. And I think for me, that inspired me, that I was like, if I'm going to be a student, I'm going to be the best student. If I'm going to be the student government president, I'm going to be the best president. If I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be the best teacher. If I'm going to be a mathematician, I want to be the best mathematician. And so absolutely their sacrifices and their own journeys continue to inspire me every day.
Hey, orgullo, pride. I love it.
No, yeah, for real. And I talk about them a lot. And also I'm a crier. And so, people will find that out about me very quickly. I don't hold my emotions back. Yeah.
Passion.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Where did you go to college and graduate school and your degrees earned?
Yeah, so like I said, I started at Milwaukee Area Technical College. I completed an associate in arts and an associate in science. So I was there 2.5 years. And then I transferred to Marquette University, where I finished a bachelor's in mathematics. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which is where I'm working now. So it's really great. But I did my master's and my PhD, both in mathematics.
In what capacity are you working now?
I am now an associate professor there. So I have tenure, and I get to work with, a lot of the people that taught me. So that's been really fun to like transition after being gone for 10 years. I come back and the fears that sometimes I had in coming back was like, oh, are they going to treat me like a colleague, or are they still going to think of me as a student? And it has been so lovely to be back and just be like, what do you think we should do about this? Or like, do you have any ideas? And just feeling like I have been embraced as a colleague has been a really nice thing to be back to.
So on your journey, I think were you the only one in the room? And is that still the case often? And what I mean by the only one in the room, an underrepresented minority?
I think there were lots of times where I have been the only one in the room. But it depends, right? Like depending on the identity that you select. So like if you're thinking, underrepresented minority, yeah, that has happened a lot. If you're thinking woman, yes, but maybe not to the same extreme. And, those two identities being at the intersection of them sometimes can also add additional challenges. But the thing that is interesting to me is that, because there's been times where I felt so alone or like so unseen in some sense. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes we as women of color in the academy, I'll speak for myself, like I feel very hyper visible. Anytime that somebody needs a Latina, they need a woman, they're like, oh, Pamela, but then when I'm like over here struggling with something difficult happening, it's like I'm invisible. And so there's a lot of this like hyper visibility and then invisibility that we kind of, that I've experienced personally. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like I have gotten involved with a lot of organizations in which I'm not the only one in the room, where I don't have to show up and, kind of be the new kid and try to figure out where I'm going to sit because like everybody looks different than me. So like, for example, the National Association for Mathematicians, right? So NAM, the organization that I've co-founded, Latinx, there's the Association for Women in Math. So there's many societies in mathematics that are really thinking very intentionally about what it feels like to potentially be the only one in the room and to bring people together so that we are not the only people in the room.
Wow. I will say, I teach at a predominantly Hispanic school near Houston, and you just a powerful image. I can't wait till my students see this, because it just having you where you are, and the image you provide is awesome. From your perspective, from your very wonderful and unique perspective, can you define the issues confronting underrepresented minorities or undocumented immigrants?
I mean, for undocumented immigrants, it's time for us to have, change in the immigration system. The DACA program, I think, has been working, but that does not lead to a path to citizenship. And so there's got to be some change coming from our government to understand that, that immigrants are here in this country. We're contributing. We are decent humans, as opposed to what other people might say about us. And so something that I would really love to see in my lifetime is an actual change and a path to citizenship for all of us, in particular for those of us that were brought here as kids, with no choice of our own, people who have been educated entirely in the US, like we're here, we're contributing, we love this country. This country is ours and we make it better. So I would love to see a change in that. For underrepresented minorities, I think some of the challenges that I have faced is, other people's beliefs and biases about what I am capable of achieving. And, the belief that, that I can do this. Like, I would like to see educators look at, a little brown girl and imagine that she can become a mathematician rather than whatever it is that they imagine that I should have become. I got told during my own educational journey that, like, oh, well, you speak Spanish and English, you should become a bilingual, secretary at a law office. And again, this person said this in front of my father when we were trying to think about like how I might get into college. And my father was like, what? Well, you already know what he said. Well, if she becomes a bilingual secretary, she's going to be the best bilingual secretary there is. But I think for that person, had a mindset that did not set me up to reach for the stars. Like, they just thought, oh, if you just do that, you'll be fine. Because, like, what else could you possibly do? Like, why would you reach for higher? And for me, I'm thinking a lot about, the trajectories that we as educators sort of can impart on our students. Like, yeah, okay, like my father said, you should be the best at anything that you do, but also you can do anything you want to do. And let's think about ways in which we can support you to get there. And so those, I think, are two issues that I can think of.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. People can try to impose their narrative upon you, but you got to stay strong in your own path. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us about your mission to develop learning communities that reinforce students' self-identity as scientists, in particular for women and underrepresented minorities. And I will say, I have the book, Testimonios.
Oh, I love it.
This belongs in every public library, in every school library throughout the nation. What a powerful book. What a powerful book.
Thank you. Yeah, I've struggled a lot with my own self-identity as a mathematician. And, you mentioned at the introduction, the podcast I co-host, Mathematically Uncensored, and, my dear co-host and friend, Eris Winger, we talk a lot about this, about, being a person of color in this country. And again, being thought to not be a mathematician, being assumed to be not a mathematician is sort of the default, and how that affects my own identity when I think about who I am, fully as a person and as a professional. And it's been very recent that I'm like, you know what? No, I am a mathematician. I do all the things that mathematicians do. And it created sort of like my own internal image of who a mathematician is. And I wouldn't see myself in that category, right? I wouldn't close my eyes at night and think like, what does a mathematician look like? And I would think about other people. I would not think about me. And so by my own experiences, what I try to think about is, how do we build a classroom environment? How do we build a research experience? How do we do anything that we do as educators that doesn't actually create that kind of damage, right? That like help students believe deep in their bones that they are mathematicians. And it is about sometimes the language that we use, or the way that we address each other, or the kind of people that we feature on, podcasts, on news articles, on a YouTube channel. And so those are the things that I think a lot about, and I'm very intentional about making sure that my students, do the things that mathematicians do in terms of the math, but also the practices, like what does it mean to be a mathematician? But also, again, trying to cultivate in them that belief that by doing mathematics makes you a mathematician. Because I think that's a thing that I've struggled with, and I don't want any of my students to ever feel that way.
I think you addressed my next question partly, but the question was, how do we rectify, remedy the situation? How can we help? Is it more exposure? Is it building their confidence? How is it that we're going to impact and remedy the situation?
Yeah, I think you're saying it, right? I think part of it is making sure that students see themselves reflected in different journeys. And so for me, and my amazing set of co-editors, the book Testimonios did that, right? It was literally like holding up a mirror to see my own kind of story in another mathematician, right? Like I think a lot about Hortensia Soto's chapter, and so I highly recommend it, the entire book, but like that chapter, like hearing her story of her, mother crossing to the US and like what that experience was like for her as an infant. So just thinking about those stories and the impact that they have on children who identify in the same heritage, and seeing them now become something that they could become. So I think that helps, right? It doesn't fix an immigration system by any means, but it helps remind us that, there are other people who are having similar life experiences, that we're not alone. But also by building classrooms in which they see themselves reflected, they might not know of these stories at home. So we can bring that into our classrooms and into the work that we do. And again, I don't know that that is the solution, but I think it helps.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what is your prognosis? What is your forecast for the future? Are we headed in the right way? What does the future hold for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the climate is steady. We're getting better. We're getting closer to this ideal where anybody, at least for me, when I think about the mathematical community, where anybody who would like to become a mathematician can have the kind of educational experiences to become a mathematician. I think there's just incredible amount of new conversations that are taking place just in the past 10 years. Like I think about the fact that, 10 years ago, I was not telling anybody anywhere publicly that I had been undocumented. That didn't start until about 5 years ago when I first started having these conversations. And it wasn't because it was revolutionary. It was because mathematics felt safer, right? It felt safer to be in a community in which I could have these conversations. And so I think that speaks to the fact that the community is changing, that we are understanding that there are systemic barriers to educational, experiences and access for students, and that we're not going to change who we think is a mathematician unless we address those systemic issues and barriers. And so I think there's a lot for us to do. There's a lot of work to still do. But there are really good people, and a lot of them trying to address these issues. And so I feel hopeful for what is to come.
So you're optimistic. Great.
Yes.
Great. So you already given a lot of advice, but at this moment, I want you to give us some explicit advice for any recent immigrants, for parents, or for students that may come across this interview.
Yeah, I think for recent immigrants, first off, welcome. We love you. We know that what you bring in terms of your culture, your heritage, your language is valuable. And, we're happy you're here. And so my advice is find other people that are sharing in that experience, because there's nothing like having a community, and always, try to work on what your dreams are. Like you came here for an opportunity. And so reach out if there's anything I can do. I'm always helpful to try to connect people to organizations that are helpful, or to education systems or institutions. So my advice is, work hard and seek for the help that you need, because people are here to help you succeed and reach the dreams that you have. For parents, I think just continue to encourage your children to wonder about mathematics, to think about, playing games with them. I know that that's something that's really hard, because parents are really busy. They're working hard and they're already doing so much. But encourage your children in whatever thing that they seem interested in doing, right? Like I remember my dad would, make me memorize everybody's phone numbers. Like he was just like, oh, she kind of seems to like numbery things. And he would just be like, what's grandma's number, randomly. And I was like, I don't know. And then he was like, you got to remember this one, And so encouraging your kids to do the things and pursue the passions that they have, I think is just super important. And for students, like my dad said, if you're going to do anything, do it as well as you possibly can. And, and again, seek mentors. I think finding mentors for me was life-changing. So people that understood where I came from and where I was hoping to go, and then they would open doors for me in ways that I never anticipated. And so sometimes, when I talk to my students, I'm like, I don't know how to help you if you don't tell me where you're trying to go. I don't know how to clear boulders from your way. I don't know what doors or windows for me to open if I'm able to, if you don't tell me what it is that you're hoping to reach. And for those of us who didn't know what we were going to become, again, having those key educators and mentors was really helpful. And so just keep working hard, strive to be the best at everything that you do, and then find some good mentors along the way.
Awesome. Echoing your father, be the best student you can
Yes.
be.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right.
Awesome. So, you personally, where will the future lead you? Will you continue with research mathematics, more outreach? Personally, what does the future have in store for Dr. Pamela Harris?
Oh my goodness. So absolutely, mathematics will never disappear from my life. I love thinking about new mathematics problems and doing research in math. And so that certainly is I think part of my lifelong journey. I definitely want to work on creating really scholarships for students. That's one of the things that I've been thinking about doing, both as Latinx is a nonprofit, like we are going to launch a scholarship for undocumented students interested in math that should be out hopefully at the start of 2023. And so I realized for me that one of the big barriers, was not being able to have access to a scholarship opportunity. And so working now at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, that's also the case, right? The university is very large, and by far we're relatively adequately priced institution given the cost of a private education, but the scholarships could also really help. And so I'm working with a set of collaborators here at the university and externally to try to figure out how we bring in some more scholarship money for students who are interested in STEM fields. And so I think for me that allows more access, and it makes a higher education more accessible, but also more inclusive in trying to get more people into the STEM fields. And I guess personally, I struggle in balancing my being a mom and being a professor and a mathematician and a wife. So personally, I'm hoping that the future leads me to figuring out how to make all of that wonderful pieces of my life better and more integrated.
Wow. What a future. Let's hope. Any parting words or final thoughts as we conclude this interview?
Yeah, I part of my journey, I think, is one of resilience, right? And I wish I didn't have to be so resilient. I wish that the systems in place were different so that I could just have been a kid and not have to worry about being undocumented. But I think about the fact that it wouldn't have made me who I am. And so I know that there are so many young people who are going to listen to this who are having their own challenging experiences. And I just want to say, stay with it. Like, don't give up. Just, figure out a different path. And again, get as much help as you need to. There are a lot of people in your educational journey who are there to support you. And so don't give up. Si se puede. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Dr. Harris, such a powerful example you provide. You know what I'm saying? I'm so happy that our young Latinx generation can look at someone like you and see that you've been through that path. You traveled that path. You made it. And a research mathematician. So I can't tell you how powerful, how incredibly grateful I am for you to come on my show and share your story.
No, thank you so much, honestly. And thank you for the work that you're doing to make people like me visible. So I appreciate you. And, I hope to continue to be in touch.
The pleasure's all mine. And you got a friend in Houston.
Awesome.
Houston.
Awesome. I will come and visit.
Best of luck. And I appreciate everything, and farewell, Dr. Harris.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible discussion, what an incredible journey Dr. Pamela Harris shared with our audience, with us. I'm so appreciative. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Let me take a quick moment and ask that if you enjoy this content, that you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, that you leave a comment below, and that you smash that like button. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Let's spread this joy, let's spread this beauty to as many people as possible. I got many wonderful things in store for this channel, and I appreciate your support. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Farewell.